Good evening to all. So welcome and thank you for coming tonight to hear about our place in space and how our place in space came to be. So as Klaus said, my name is Antonella Nota. I'm actually with the European Space Agency. I'm an astronomer. And this is because the European Space Agency is a partner to NASA in this amazing mission, which is the Hubble Space Telescope. So, all right. So, yes, Hubble Space Telescope, a magnificent telescope that is 350 nautical miles over our head. And it's been in orbit for 28 years and has produced wonderful images that have basically infiltrated all our lives. The images, so this is the machine. You see here in the shuttle bay, because Hubble has been actually repaired by astronauts 5 times. So this has been an amazing feat of technology. And now we'll talk how Hubble has impacted many other different fields of humanity. So the beautiful images, you will recognize here some of the iconic images that they appear in movies, they appear on advertisement, on the TV. To astronomers, they are data. They're basically information. We use this image to measure things, to measure fluxes, brightnesses, spectral composition, to understand our universe. And as you can see, like for example, in an image like this, which is called the Hubble Deep Field, this is a pencil beam in a dark area of the sky. But what you can see here are thousands of galaxies that are as far as a few million years from the beginning of the universe itself. So this is the power of this telescope. So when we started seeing these images appearing in the popular culture, we realized that the narrative was not only related to astronomy and the measurements and the sheer, look at the data, but people were building their own narrative out of these images. Like, for example, you can see here, you saw a guitar. This was the cover of a CD. I have an entire talk lasting an hour of all the occasions where we have seen Hubble images just popping out, meaning different things to different people. And this encouraged us to think that, well, we were onto something bigger, maybe bigger than just our scientific experiment, our individual research. This is, for example, a planetary nebula. It is absolutely beautiful. The star, it's an evolved star that has lost, its outer shell. It made the cover of National Geographic. Here you see the original Hubble image. At the center, you see the dying star. When stars die, they go out a bang, and they really make a spectacular firework display. So we've started collaborating with artists, because artists would provide that extra dimension to our sheer, rational look at data. And the first experience, we started slowly wading into a foreign territory for us astronomers. The first of such experiments was with German artist Tim Otto Roth, who is a conceptual artist and is also a scholar of astronomical processes. And so, for example, what you see here is this green laser projection on the facade of this beautiful Palazzo Cavalli Franchetti on the Grand Canal in Venice. The green laser is painting signals from the most distant galaxies that have ever been observed with Hubble, as a matter of fact, from the distant past. It was so successful that eventually we brought it to Baltimore. This is the Science Center, same green laser, and we saw the people just attracted to it, just clustering around it and looking. And so curiosity, imagination, creativity, thinking at a different level, at a deeper level about our universe and about what it all means. We both team at the American Natural History Museum in 2011. What you see here is the same projection on the outer shell of the Rose Planetarium, which is 100,000 people saw this exhibit. We then went a little farther, and we team experimented. We tried to explain a physical effect, like the Doppler effect. You know, the things that are getting closer to you have a higher pitch sound, like a train, and when they go farther away, the sound becomes deeper. Well, you can do the same with light, because you know, light, high frequencies are blue, white, purple, lower frequencies are red. And so this was, Heaven Caruso was an artwork inspired by the Doppler effect in astronomy. But let's come to our place in space, because that's what you want to hear about. So this began as a collaboration between an astronomer, myself, and an art historian and curator, Anna Caterina Bellati. And with a group of people who all had their different expertise and skills. They were communicators, outreach, technical writers, science writers, people who knew how to approach the public, how to bring science to the public, because that was our original goal. And so we came back with the idea of creating a journey, which is a journey in space, but is also a journey into our own soul. It allows us to look deeper into ourselves. And the images of the Hubble Space Telescope basically are a backdrop to key questions that the astronomers share with all of you. I mean, we all wonder where we come from. We all wonder where we are going. What is our future? We all wonder if there is life out there. Are we alone in this universe, or we're not? And so we thought that what a beautiful way, we have the Hubble imagery, we can ask artists to basically give us their own interpretation. And I have a couple of pictures from Venice. This is a little mock-up of the Hubble Space Telescope. But the thing I want to pay attention to is we peppered our exhibit with quotes, because that connected both science and art. So you can read the Isaac Newton quote, or you can see a few more that are some of my favorite. Art is meant to disturb, science reassures. Science is no more than an investigation of a miracle we can never explain. Art is the interpretation of that miracle. The most, my favorite, and I should have shown it in German, but just for consistency, most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. So curiosity, the fundamental emotions that stands at the cradle of true art and true science. As you will see in a few minutes, because Uli, the curator of Our Place in Space Vienna, will show us the exhibit in a few minutes. The journey starts from where you are. Here it's Venice. But you will see upstairs that it starts from Vienna. And then, but the fundamental thing of this video is that it flies away. You fly far away, and Earth becomes small. First you recognize the nation, the planet. It kind of disappears in the greatness of the universe. Earth becomes so tiny, like the tiny little speck. We feel so important, and we're absolutely a tiny little speck out there. In Venice, the journey was taken by a gondola, but the fundamental thing is we go to the edge of the universe. We see the beginning. In our journey, we get to the very end. We see the cosmic web. We see where it all started, the Big Bang. And the exhibit takes you step by step through this journey. So Our Place in Space Vienna, recognition to Uli Kushner for really capturing the essence. This is the 4th edition of this exhibit, capturing the essence of the journey and making a very powerful exhibit. And a shout out to the 2 artists of tonight, which I think I really loved their exhibit. Daniela Brehm will hear more. I think I have to say just one word, and probably I'm over my time, but this is so close to what I do for my science that this is really hit home for me to see it represented in such a powerful way. And then the end of Hubble. I mean, how can we even imagine that this magnificent machine one day will basically plunge into the ocean somewhere and will probably find bits and pieces on the Vanuatu beach? So thank you to Uli and GLOBArt and the museum and the amazing artists who have collaborated to this.
Thank you, Antonella. So in the series of presentations of the first panelists, we'll now see Anna Lerchbaumer and Eleni Mutzika-Pallis present together. Anna Lerchbaumer was born in 1989 in Innsbruck, in Austria. She studied architecture as well as video and video installation in Innsbruck, Madrid, and Vienna. She's in the master program Art and Science at the University of Applied Arts here in Vienna, and works as a video and sound artist. She creates works that feature our technologies, build surroundings and mobility, and performs a near cinematic investigation of hypermodernity, its memories and emotions. A desire to know and to be in the world while expanding it guides her practice. Lerchbaumer composes her artistic research into a rhythmic narrative. Recent work has been shown at Galerie Michaela Stock, Galaxy Museum in Chongqing in China, or here in the Natural History Museum and at Grinzinger Projekte in Vienna. Eleni Mutzika-Pallis is born in Athens in Greece. She studied architecture and scenography in Athens and Vienna, as well as art and science at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. Since 2018, she's a PhD student at the Academy of Fine Arts. Pallis finds inspiration in urban fabrics, terrain vague, transitional landscapes, early machines, urban and social utopias. Her artistic works are usually products of experimenting with textures, natural elements, chemical reactions, light and sound. The site-specific installations open up absurd new territories to the audience. Pallis is currently living and working in Vienna, and we have her here together with Anna. Please, I welcome you for your presentation.
Here I am, officially part of a collection of natural history. I fell from the sky in 2026. My name is Hubble.
So hello, this is Eleni and I'm Anna, as we heard, and yeah, we collaborated with this jam on our video installation that is still upstairs, and you can see it also afterwards if you want. And the show, the aim of the show was to bring works of art and the images of the Hubble in dialogue, and we immediately thought of what happens to the instrument after its scientifically useful life is over, and what is the cultural, political, and economical value, and what will happen if this instrument will land on Earth, what will happen to the place, how will it transform, and when and where will that happen?
So we began weaving a story, a scenario, a fictive scenario, featuring the Hubble as a technological pop star, as we like to say. The instrument will supposedly have reached the end of its useful life by the late 2020s, which is actually the time where our story begins. we take a glimpse into the future where parts of the Hubble are being retrieved somewhere on Earth, and from that point on they start writing their own history.
I am natural history now. I was the first intergalactic journalist reporting from other universes and other times. I was capturing electromagnetic radiation and transmitting gigabytes of raw data that were translated into mesmerizing images. Oh, beauty beyond human perception! No human could ever come as far. I am natural history now.
So once the telescope is not in use anymore, it is considered space debris and has to be disposed of. This brought us, we researched further and dipped into several studies that examine the most official disposal strategies. These include a controlled re-entry into the and disposal into the ocean, as well as an on-orbit demolition mechanism, which would minimize the size of the parts, and thus minimizing as well the risk of them causing damage while hitting the Earth. These studies and all this material and information, we found a lot of inspiration in those puzzle pieces that we then collaged to put together our own scenario.
Back into the studio, we experimented to create a convincing prediction of how the Hubble could look like and what of the high-tech materials would remain after burning through the atmosphere, and if it is resting somewhere on a beach and stays there for a while, it will transform as well due to global warming and a bit of plastic and so on. So this is our process.
This is where I landed, covered by sand and salty water, surrounded by nostalgic metal weaponry.
And for symbolic reasons, we did choose a specific group of islands around Point Nemo, called the Vanuatu Islands. The first reason was because it is scientifically proven that the happiest people on Earth are living there. And the second reason was that they already have a pile of nostalgic debris, some leftovers from World War II. And tourists arrive there to snorkel around military vessels and all the supplies that are still there underwater. And of course, the Hubble finds its place among instruments of power and warfare.
So then, at this point, we asked this question in every step of our work. Our favorite question: what could go wrong? So it doesn't take long until all kinds of enthusiasts and opportunists swarm to the island to come the shores for all kinds of for other potential precious garbage, as kind of a new age gold rush, if you will. And of course, it doesn't take long for shrewd developers to arrive to the island to take advantage of the whole situation and of the fame these islands have become, where they erect a theme park, Hubble, another booming touristic non-place on the world, whose it would be featuring attractions and rides, telling the story. Telling the story, the life and death of Hubble. Its most famous attraction is a roller coaster, simulating the wild ride from the Hubble from space through the burning atmosphere and into the ocean.
Back to where I started from, I missed the safety of the laboratory. From here I can tell my story, it is all engraved on me. A lifetime of deciphering the mysteries of the universe. Here I am, respected like a god and treasured like a gem. I am real treasure and bring pure pleasure. I am real treasure and bring pure pleasure.
Thank you for this fantastic presentation. Truly our artistic way of presenting the art. Thanks very much. Now for the last speaker in our first panel, Daniela Brehm was born in Bogota, in Colombia. She studied transdisciplinary arts at the University for Applied Arts in Vienna, where she's currently finishing her master's in art and science. She has worked with scientific institutions such as Art at CMS in CERN, the HEFI Vienna, and the Medical University of Vienna. Her work constantly crosses the membrane between natural sciences, poetry, and fine arts, which becomes permeable in her drawings, representations, and installations. Brehm has exhibited in Bogota, Madrid, Vienna, Geneva, and Brussels, among others. She's currently working on her own theoretical and poetical hypothesis about matter, as well as doing research on how natural science and fine arts intertwine.
Hello. I will talk a little bit about my work that I'm exhibiting here and about the path that that took me on that road to do this. This is my piece. It's called Our Celestial Bodies, and it is a cloud of around 200 glass bottles that hang inside of a structure, and each bottle contains a chemical element. So on the stickers are written the names of the element and the chemical form and where to find them and what they do for us. I mean, if they are part of our bodies or if we can find them as minerals on Earth. I decided to work with this picture of the Hubble Space Telescope. It's called the Pillars of Creation, if I'm not wrong. And it is, as Uli told me once, a nursery of stars, which I loved. So in the the parts where there is more light, stars are being born in this picture. So in my installation, you can also recognize where stars or where the elements are born. The elements are born usually out of the death of stars. So on the stickers, you can read what kind of stars had to die for that element to be created. So this picture that I took, I was lucky to have Reisinger's work behind with this blue light to make the comparison between the Hubble Space image and my work. Yes. So I was, the starting point for me was how close we are to the stars, how close our human body is to the stars, and how much alike we are. So I have a collection of 21 bottles in the front of the structure, which are the 21 elements creating our body. And you can recognize it because there's a little human drawn on them. And so you can actually see where the elements that make up your body come from in space. The rest of the elements are, I tried to take every element that there is, every chemical element. Of course, I don't have any radioactive ones. And the gas, I had to, I could not bring the gas into the bottle. But everything is there. Everything is somehow represented. Some of them are in mineral form. It's about 52 of the bottles are mineral form, and the minerals are part of the collection of the Natural History Museum. So they lent me part of their collection for the piece. And some of them are in forms that we know, like carbon or phosphorus or copper. This is copper sulfate, yes, which you can get, easy in a way. So this whole idea came from this machine. I don't know if maybe some of you know it. I took this picture in CERN 2 years ago around. It's a proton source. In CERN, they collide protons in the Large Hadron Collider. And this is the machine that breaks the hydrogen atoms into one proton and one electron, which was amazing for me because it was, I had the question, where do they get the hydrogen from? So I asked a lot of scientists there, and they said, we have no idea, we order it online. Actually, they need 3 milligrams of protons for the whole year, and they do, millions of collisions every minute, but they only need 3 milligrams per year. And that was just another amazing fact for me. I was wondering if there is a difference between a hydrogen atom that is part of a living thing or of a non-living thing. And the physicists I talked to, they found the idea very poetical, but completely non-scientifical. So I'm working on that idea, like what is the difference between the hydrogen atom on the sun and the hydrogen atom in my body? So they said it's not about the hydrogen, it's about the carbon. So I went on working with carbon. And this is actually a self-portrait of me, of the carbon inside of my body. It's 75 bottles filled with different amounts of carbon for different parts of my body. So we are 18% carbon, which is amazing, and it is actually the element keeping us alive. So I try to do a self-portrait, thinking what is the difference between this carbon that you see in the bottles and the carbon that is part of us and keeps us alive. And to close my presentation, this is another, I work a lot with poetry, and this is a poem by Ernesto Cardenal, a Nicaraguan poet, written on the walls of Tzean. And I have been doing this in different institutions, scientific institutions. Here in Vienna, I'm doing it in HEFI, and I also did it in Cambridge in the Cavendish laboratories in the physics lab. And it represents, it tries to do an analogy between the poetic language and the physics language, because in my case, my questions are more poetic than scientific, which I'm actually glad that they are. Yes, that's it.
The second panel, as I announced in the beginning, is a more general panel on artists who work with science. We have, again, a scientist, only an astronomer, but still a scientist, and two artists who will join the panel. And to start with science, we thought that Luca Fossati should begin. He's a researcher at the Space Research Institute of the Austrian Academy of Science. His research interests span from exoplanets to stars. In the exoplanet field, his research concentrates mostly on the observational and theoretical study of planet atmospheric escape and of the star-planet interaction phenomenon. His research also covers the characterization of planetary atmospheres. In the stellar characterization of stellar atmospheres, the study of stellar evolution and the detection of magnetic fields for stars across the whole Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. He has 97 peer-reviewed publications, 22 of which he was the first author on. I hope that's still current. No? A bit more, good.
good evening, everyone. Yeah, so I am an astrophysicist. And what we do in my group, we study extrasolar planets that are planets outside our solar system. In particular, we study the atmosphere of these planets. So we try to find out of what these planets are made of, which is the structure of the atmosphere of these planets, and what happens when these planets interact with their stars. Planets are not entities that live alone. Our planet would not be as we know it. Probably we would not be here without the sun. So the interaction between the star and the planet is a crucial phenomenon. I only have a couple of minutes, so I thought, how do we as scientists approach art and how it comes to us? And actually, it comes to us daily, in a way. When we need to present our work, we need to make scientific plots, and these plots, they need to be not only convey what we want to say, but they also have to be beautiful to see. So we try to use colors in such a way that they make sense, and they're not disturbing, not only when they are printed, but also when they're shown on slides. The other way is when we need to convey what we do to the public, and that's not only it's not only a need to convey our results, but it's also, in our case in particular, in the exoplanet field, is the need to try to visualize what we can't see. And I give you a few examples here. These are artist impressions that have been made by different agencies to convey results, and actual scientific results. There are a few things besides the first one, which is really an artistic impression. It has there is no science behind, okay? But the others, they try to convey a result. And there are some that try to picture how super-Earths are made. That's the one up there. So these are planets that are bigger than the Earth, but should be not too different from Earth or Venus or Mars. Here there is an artist's impression of TRAPPIST-1, which is, well, it has been in the news very, very much recently. It's a very cool star that hosts several planets, and they range from being very, very hot, and you see, this guy is evaporating, to being very, very cold, and that's freezing out there. And then I have put my own, that's there. That was actually my first press release that is based on Hubble data, and it has been made by NASA. And it should picture what we thought is happening with this particular planet, where the star is eating the planet. The funny thing of this particular picture is that it might, to some, it might look real. Actually, I remember when the press release came out, it went out at the CNN, and the journalist at CNN said that this was an actual Hubble picture, which unfortunately is impossible. But that's where we use art to picture, also for ourselves, how we think what is out there looks like. And this is something we will never be able to see with any instrument we will be able to build. To conclude, this is the other connection. So NASA has started let me say something else. Let me start from a different side. There is the idea of extrasolar planets as habitable worlds. We don't yet have another Earth. We don't know if there is another habitable planet out there. We don't know that yet. But NASA thought, okay, let's take the planets we know of that are close inside or close to the habitable zone, which is a region in space around the star where a planet can have liquid water on the surface. And there are some, it took some of these planets and made advertisements for travel. Like they have been made when trains started to work. And there are some that are very interesting, like this one, for example. This is a planet without a star. So there is always night. The night is all day long. Or you have the planet with 2 stars and you have 2 shadows. Everything has 2 shadows there. So they try to picture this, and always the idea, I think, is to in this case is not to convey scientific results, but in this case is to attract people's attention to science and try to connect people to science, which is very, very necessary nowadays.
Thank you very much, Luca. Now I have the pleasure to introduce Yves van Linden-Toll. She's a London-based artist. She works with explosives, fusing her interest in nature, cosmology, chemistry, and physics. She creates abstract works which often examine concepts of time, density, and matter, as well as deep human emotions and motivations. Among other things, Yves was commissioned by Disney to design a limited edition model Star Wars BB-8 robot and installed a large-scale explosive event in Trinity Square for the Science Gallery Dublin's 10th anniversary celebrations. Yves was artist in residence at the European Space Agency and Ars Electronica Future Lab in 2017, and regularly presents talks, workshop lectures, and seminars internationally. It's our pleasure to have your presentation here.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. Let me get this one. So yes, I make art with explosives. Why? When I was at university, I was studying land art for my dissertation, and several things kind of came together, and I wanted to drop bombs on the landscape to exemplify how we as humans have choices about how we use the tools that we create, whether those tools are bombs, whether those tools are economics, whether those tools are social structures. And I wanted to allow us to understand that that power lies within us and not with the object. And early on, this is one example, early on when I started exhibiting this work, I realized that there was a very close connection with human emotions and explosives as people came up to me and started to explain their deepest secrets and their very deep feelings. And I was a little bit shocked by this, but I began to utilize it by inviting people to bring me objects, and I would then explode those objects, and they had to tell me why they wanted these objects to be exploded. Now this, of course, brought an incredible amount of motivations, so revenge, as you might expect, but also new beginnings, new life, fresh starts, and all kinds of different political and different kind of motivations. So this was a very incredible discovery, which I began to utilize. Now, I was very lucky last year to win the Artist in Residence at the European Space Agency, which took place over a year, and I spent several visits there over the course of a year, both to East Estec in Noordwijk, which is the technical center, Darmstadt, the control center, where I was present for the Schiaparelli landing, and I was also at Ars Electronica Future Lab. The project that I went to, the residency, was called Starstorm, and the residency culminated in presenting a large-scale explosive installation to the festival goers. Now, it was immersive-esque style installation where people were shipped on buses to a secret venue, and they were very up close with the explosives. And there were several different explosive performances, which each represented the life cycle of the stars and stars within the universe. So this was my research at European Space Agency. I'm going to give you a little taste of the work now. So as you can see, people were led around the building into different spaces. And sometimes they were led outside and they sat right in the middle as explosions, fireballs exploded all around them. And my work isn't illustrative. It doesn't explain the science. It is there to allow people to experience that sense of awe and emotion that you feel when you think about outer space. And power and all the other things associated with it. So my time at ESA was spent researching quite a lot for this project, but as well as that, I was very determined to create this dialogue that we talk about, this art and science dialogue, which is actually, interestingly enough, the question, it is actually a controversial issue because a lot of artists in these residencies go, research, come away, make their work, and it is very much an inspirational and in some ways a one-way contract. I think the biological art-science combinations tend to do much better at this. But while I was there, I created several opportunities for engagement, including workshops, brainstorm sessions where the scientists got to feedback on the project and influence the project, which I'd never done before, so this was actually a new process for me, quite a scary one, but it was really amazing. Very worthwhile. And I also created some interactive artworks where quite a high volume of people could come in and take part in while I was at ESTEC. I'm not going to say too much about these because I want to leave room for the dialogue, but just to give you a sense of what my perspective will be in the panel. As I came away from the European Space Agency, I went on to write a paper about discussing whether artists can influence the future of space culture. And that has now led to developing a program for the space industry, which will hopefully try to bridge that gap. So my perspective today really is coming from that experience and from that observation point. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Got lost in papers. Our last speaker for the second panel is Victoria Vesna, PhD. She's an artist and professor at the University of California, LA Department of Design, Media Arts, and the director of the ArtSci Center at the School of the Arts and the California Nanosystems Institute. Although she graduated as a painter in Belgrade in 1984, her work now consists in experimental, creative research between disciplines and technologies. She investigates how communication technologies affect collective behavior and perceptions of identity shift in relation to scientific innovation. That's what her PhD also treated at the University of Wales in 2000. Her work involves long-term collaborations with composers, nanoscientists, neuroscientists, and evolutionary biologists. Victoria has exhibited her work in more than 20 solo exhibitions, more than 70 group shows, and has published more than 20 papers and gave more than 100 invited talks in the last decade. She's the North American editor of AI and Society Journal. that's edited at the Springer Verlag in the UK. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I actually don't work as an individual so much. I work in groups and I collaborate, and I wanted to show the last decade of collaboration. So I'm going to run through it very quickly to give you a sense. My focus is making the invisible visible and the inaudible audible, and I'm really interested in that. I'm an artist because I had horrible science teachers, and a lot of the scientists I work with had horrible art teachers who told them they weren't talented or they couldn't draw. And I believe that we're in the in-between stage that's an anomaly. Eventually there's going to be no art and science, or art or science. I think it's going to merge into creative people who are not creative people. And I already see that, but it's very exciting to see, especially now, 50 years of Leonardo was celebrated, and Frank Molina, who was an astrophysicist, started the whole art and science journal, so that's exciting. Anyway, I'm interested in slowing down time. I'm creating immersive experiences and really working with scientists to change their brains and have them change my brains and get to a place that's in between. You can't quite describe what the hell it is. And to give a little context, actually, it connects a little bit to the idea of what I'm interested in from start. I put together 2 volumes that I collaborated on as well with Margaret Ledger and Christian Paul. Database aesthetics, to think about the large set of data and also what kind of art is produced with information overflow. So it very much relates to science too. If we're getting all this information about climate change, does it matter really? Can we even respond? But if we can experience something, maybe that's what we're about. So I'm interested in creating experiences and context. And the example that you gave earlier of context where you put science into an art gallery and gallery put art, etc. So very quickly. Blue Morph is an example of a project that I did with James Jujebski. He's a nanoscientist. This is a project that neither one of us were actually interested to do. It came to us, and it wanted us to produce it. So we did. We were in service of this butterfly that is endangered. And the blue actually is nanoscience of our eyes. So what you see as the blue iridescence is not pigment, it's really the patterns. And so we looked at the patterns, we looked at the wings, and it was amazing, but I didn't really know what to do with this. But we wanted to actually think about how do you measure metamorphosis of a chrysalis into a butterfly. And after a long kind of experimental curiosity driving us both, he put a small nano mirror on the chrysalis and was shooting lasers on it. And what resulted was this, which was amazing. And my feeling was, oh, this is very similar to financial markets. It's kind of going in bursts. And everybody was cracking up. And then we took those oscillations, sped them up, and made them audible. And it was amazing. So I thought, I want people to experience metamorphosis. And without explaining much, this is in the Science Center, but it was all over. It's going to Slovenia now. It was at Marseille Museum dormant for about 2 years. But anyway, you sit and you experience the sound of metamorphosis. Another collaboration that's been going on for 10 years now is with a wonderful neuroscientist, Siddhartha Ramakrishnan from India, who's now living in the States, who introduced me to the idea of the Hox gene, which now has become my mission to tell everybody what a Hox gene is. It's the gene that determines how we're shaped, and it's the same whether you're a lizard or an elephant or a human. So I wanted to somehow tell the world, hey, look, we're all the same. And I used the Chinese zodiac as a kind of a context for it and started dinners. So we all sit at a table as animals, and you're either eaten or you eat. And we talk about the animals in the Chinese zodiac. Now, what I noticed, which was really amazing, is that half of the animals in the zodiac, that's 3,000 years old, are lab animals, and half are mythical animals. Anyway, so here we are in the Museum of Natural History in Seattle, and the director loved it so much he brought up all kinds of embryos and animals, and just loved these museums. Birdsong Diamond has been a 5-year collaboration with Dr. Charles Taylor, who's an evolutionary biologist, and a physicist, Takashi Kagami. And here what we did is we had people mimic birdsong to really show how difficult it is and how complex birdsong is. And it's kind of funny, but it's also makes you realize how deaf we've become to nature and bird songs. Another obsession is octopus, a 4-year collaboration with neuroscientist Mark Cohen. And I developed a piece where 2 people sit across each other. They have 8 colors and 8 sounds, and they're exchanging nonverbal communication and thinking of the octopus. He was intrigued because he could never, ever get this kind of data in his neuroscience lab with 1 person isolated, but suddenly there's 2 people having these kind of communications with sound and light, and being surrounded by other people. I mean, you could never even get permission to do that. And last, I just came back from Deep Space, Ars Electronica, where we presented Noise Aquarium for the first time in 3D. This actually I'm doing with a sense of urgency. It was Alfred Wendel, who's the director of scientific visualization here at Angewandte. He approached me with this amazing, he said he's creating a database of planktons. And the planktons are actually scanned in 3D, which is incredible. Think about 1 millimeter creatures scanned into 3D, and then he wants to reanimate them. But I don't know what to do with it. And then I thought, well, how do the planktons respond to noise pollution? Which nobody asked. So we started thinking about it. But then we started thinking about plastic, and I saw plankton eating microplastic, and it totally freaked me out. I thought, the world needs to know. If planktons die, we all die. And it really became my mission. 80% of oxygen is the planktons. Everybody, wake up. So these are the 8 creatures. We know about whales and dolphins. They die, they bleed, we know all that. But we don't know about the bottom of the food chain. And so I decided to blow up these planktons, they're amazing, and make them as large as whales, and immerse people in either communing with the plankton when you hear the whale song, or you're destroying everything when you hear fracking and sonar and shipwrecks and on and on and on. It's really disturbing. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join me at the table. We have still fresh water for now. Maybe, yeah, I'll stay in the middle. Thank you, Victor. Well, thank you very much for these interesting presentations of whole corpora of work. There's one theme that has been popping up, and I think we should address is it's the theme of what do you do with these scientific results? And one simple answer was we visualize them, and we need artists to help us visualize them. But then I feel that you go somehow you go many steps further. I would say further, even though that's already kind of a classification, but by creating these kind of immersive spaces where people relive an experience. In your case, with the spectacular, it's very spectacular. Is that something we need because people need the spectacle, or is that something we should be careful with? That would be one question, of course, and in your case, even like embodied somehow, embodied experimenting these different things. Do you think these would be new ways of sort of pushing beyond the visualization? Like I make a picture of what's going on. Is that something that's important to you? You can.
Oh, here,
yeah.
okay. Well, I think that all visualization of science, and the scientists can verify this, is imaginary. So if you take something that's a nano level or cosmic level, if a scientist does it, or if I do it as an artist, it's imaginary. There's no way really to represent it that's really the way it is. So it really is about where our collective consciousness is to say, here's how it looks. And the atom is a perfect example. It's actually completely wrong. So what we have is the atom little picture. That's a completely wrong representation. That was right in the past paradigm, but now we realize it's wrong. But we all think this is how the atom looks. So actually illustration is a real problem when it's actually, the artist takes it, doesn't really know what's going on, comes up with an idea that's beautiful, but in the end actually could be misinterpreting or misguiding the understanding of what the scientist is trying to do or say. So I think to have the two people work together, or 4 or 10 or 20, to really think, how do we project this so that it's got some true value to it? It's critical. I mean, so much of the visualization, even what you've shown, so much of it, is it really like that? I don't think so. Does it really relate to experience? I don't know. But if I see your bottles, I think, whoa, there's some truth there, because you've gone into it deeper and tried to really figure out how it all works. So, the whole idea of illustration is, or interpretation, is problematic.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah, sure.
I think for me, this kind of exemplifies a wider kind of idea, which is that these illustrations, but also even our understanding of what art is and what science is and what this collaboration is it's for our own convenience. It's a tool. So we say art is art and we say science is science because it helps us to understand things. It helps us to categorize and learn. So, all science came from philosophy, and at a certain point, our understanding became so detailed that we had to section different sciences off, and we've had to go into more and more details. So nature doesn't make these classifications. Nature works and does its thing in any way it wants, but they're useful for us. So the illustration is useful to a certain degree, but we always have to understand that it's an illustration and that it's helping us understand a concept for that moment at that time. And this is something that a lot of scientists have to accept within their workplace, from my experience. They go into their work, they could spend a lifetime on a project or and they do quite often. And, at the end of it, something will come along and upturn the whole thing. So I think it's indicative of this.
Yeah. So there is, from my experience, there is indeed, when these illustrations are made, there is a strong communication between the scientist and the artist. So there is communication there, and the artist tries to visualize what the scientist has in his head. I have to admit, it helps the scientist too, because the picture you've seen, the image I've shown, the data have absolutely nothing to do with that picture. Exactly. They are something that is completely different from what you see there. They are not even images. So it's our interpretation of the data that has become an image, and that helps the scientist, because we also need sometimes it can't be completely abstract. We need to get to the reality. It helps imagining how things are. On the other hand, I tend to think at some point we will have, as scientists, we'll have to we have to be careful with these kind of illustrations not to become too much driven by them at the same time, and too much driven by trying to make them spectacular and interesting. They still need to serve the purpose, and they're not they're not the end product. They are a medium, they're a tool, but they're not. It's not what we need to aim at.
Well, yeah, thank you for this great statement. One thing I'm still grappling with is whether the term illustration, I mean, there is illustration, it exists, and in your case it's right, but whether it adequately describes what you two are trying to do in your artistic practice. Because we don't have visualization, we have something else, which you said immersive, but immersive is a very wide term, right? A lot of artists do immersive installation that have no sort of correspondence in scientific phenomena. So what is it like? Something equivalent to visualization would be making it sensible. You're not visual. You're not only doing it for the eye. At least, I think in both cases, you're doing it for an embodied experience. So maybe there is another way of defining what you actually do in relationship to the science. It's not illustration, I think, and it's not only visualization. Do we have a term for that yet? A concept?
It's a good question.
No, art is much more, of course, than this specific. Yeah.
Well, art is the word that's used when you can't figure out what else it is, basically. I think the concept of you were saying spectacular is quite interesting. And what a lot of people don't realize is when I work with explosives, I can do very tiny and delicate explosions as well. And I've used explosions as small as a matchbox to blow kisses onto photographs. So this, although the example I gave with Starstorm looks very powerful and expressive, they're actually moments of quiet, there are moments of contemplation, and there can be quite meditative work made with explosions. And I think this is reflective of the way that we look at space, in that it is spectacular. I mean, how can solar mass ejections not be spectacular? Everyone who learns about solar mass ejections gets obsessed and falls in love with them. But then there's hydrostatic equilibrium, the moment a star is born, and there's a lot of poetics and self-introspection that comes with who are we, where are we in space, and that has to be included. And that's why I take people on this journey, to allow them to experience all of those things. So it's not just the spectacular, it's not just the hard sell, it's not just explaining, it's allowing people to feel something. So I don't know if there's a word for it yet, but maybe we'll find one.
Yeah, I think
maybe it's good that there isn't one.
It would be interesting to investigate. I mean, we could also say, because you talked a lot about the passion, and we have you want people to understand that and realize and so on. We could also say, well, I mean, we're in a world where we need to do that because people have Hollywood movies. Wouldn't it be better if people were still able to sit down and read the actual data or the article? I mean, is it like already the lost paradise, and therefore the artists have to push the volume up as everybody else pushes the volume up? So art has to push the volume up too?
Well, I mean, speaking of popular culture, now to move it a little bit away from art, probably a lot of you have seen Planet Earth with Attenborough, right? The last one that he did, there was 5 minutes where he talked about plastics and what's going on with the animals and the whole underwater world. And the Queen of England declared a war on plastics. I mean, this is the power of popular culture. And it's amazing. We've had papers, we've had scientists screaming about it, we've had discussions, we have groups and workshops, etc. But it was this 5 minutes of really, first of all, very emotional from him, because all his life he is dedicated to this planet and to looking at the amazing diversity that's going down with incredible numbers. Thousands of species are disappearing all the time. And yes, the pitch has to go up because we're overwhelmed by administration, like where I come from, where truth is not important anymore, scientists are to be not trusted. It's really about, okay, experience this. You know, so if I throw a fracking noise at you from all angles and you really feel it vibrating in your body, and it happens only 10 seconds and you're freaking out, imagine hours and hours and hours of this and what it's doing to our environment, and it's not separate from us. We're ingesting this plastic, we're ingesting this noise. So yes, I think creating experiences, but you can't do it alone. I feel really strongly that you have to work directly with scientists, with musicians, with people, with kids who are the best critics of all, by the way. They'll tell you, do they like it or not, more than anyone. And just really, and they're inheriting the earth, by the way. So really just having this experience, but not didactic, and this is where the art comes in. Because you go to some of these STEM things, and it really makes me want to puke, because it's just, again, the same thing, where it's like, you press this happens, you look here, that happens, wave your arms, and then, yeah, we had fun, wasn't that fun, all the pollution, okay, let's go home now. You know, no, I want them to feel these plastic molecules are going into your body, and you could die. All of us could die. We all could get cancer. See how it feels. Yeah, let's have fun, but see how it feels. It's going to be a completely different thing going out from that experience, right? It should be in classrooms. It should be in, even in these kind of events, we're talking a lot. We should be experiencing together, not sitting here while you're listening. I'm actually against, you know, really a lot of these structures. They need to change. But, you know, sometimes I feel really pessimistic, because everybody just keeps going. And, you know, our president is saying truth is not important. I mean, you just go, okay, I guess it's the end. We have to go to some other planet. I don't know. I mean, sorry about that.
Thank you.
I went on a rant. I'm sorry.
No, it's much needed, much needed. Thank you. Before I give the word to the audience again, there's one second thing that has triggered me. It's this question of rightness, because you said, well, on the one hand, all these visualizations are already sort of made up, but at the same time, you still like work with the scientists to get it right. So I'm wondering what that concept of getting it right, while at the same time it's not right in a traditional sense, what that could be. And it also relates to what you said, that in the end, the visualization is not a visualization of the data, but a visualization of your interpretation of the data, right? So there's the interpretation first. And of course, you can try to get it right, but you might get the interpretation wrong. And then the artist can try to get right how they visualize your interpretation. So there are many layers.
That's an interesting concept. I haven't thought about that before. So it can be indeed that our interpretation is completely wrong. We don't. It's you know, astrophysics is not math. You have uncertainties. You never know whether what you find is the ground truth or there is something else behind. There are although cases where science is, you don't need illustrations. You can actually get to the ground truth, and actually connected to what she said before. There is, I've seen before this movie of you start from Venice and you zoom out and you go away from the Earth, and that should give you the idea of how tiny we are. How insignificant actually we are. The sun is one of the many stars in the galaxy. There are many galaxies in the universe. There are many planets. But there are actually images that we can take, that have been taken, to show this. And it's not visualization. It's real pictures. And thinking about, for example, when Carl Sagan made Voyager, I think it was Voyager 1 turning, it was at Saturn, it turned back. It looked back and it imaged the sun, the Earth looked through the rings of Saturn. And that it's an actual picture, and that really tells us how tiny we are.
Maybe to follow up, what is it to get it right? I mean, to continue this question for you and your art.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a problem with the whole question because for me, I mean, I do talk about art and I talk about science because it's convenient, and as I said, we kind of work within those sort of domains. But actually, I had to let go of the idea of what art was quite a long time ago, and otherwise I couldn't make the work that I make because I was looking, where is the art? Is it art? And then I said, I don't care. I had to say, I don't care if it's art. I don't care if it's science. I have to make what I need to make, and I have to learn and work in the fields that I want to work in and make what I want to make. So in terms of the question, is it right? It only is right if it feels that I'm expressing something or communicating something, or I don't know. You know when it's right, and I know that's a strange thing to say, but it's when something speaks to people, you've got something bigger than you, and you forget about yourself. When there's no ego anymore, when you suddenly have something that it has its own life, then you know you've got it right.
So the criterion is that it speaks to people?
Gives you goosebumps.
Okay, but I know one man who gave people tons of goosebumps, and he certainly didn't get it right. Well, Adolf Hitler. What I want to say is that if the criterion is that it touches people, then we're not in science, right?
Yeah, but that's why I don't work alone.
Agree.
And a good example is when she was doing a workshop with what her subject was. I see what you're saying, and I do.
Into like people like it, I've done my job.
No, of course, but this is exactly why you went and you worked and workshopped and talked to the scientists and really kind of get a sense. Okay, I'm learning, but I want to get feedback from the people who are doing this research. I'm always interested to work with scientists really directly, for a long time, by the way. It took me 2-3 years before we actually started the work in birds, because I didn't understand evolutionary biology, birds, bird language. I didn't even know why am I doing this, but I kind of get the sense, and we start talking, and you can kind of tell when you're shifting away and you're becoming too poetic, for lack of a better word, and when you're really kind of touching into what the point of this scientific investigation is. And you know that you're not... See, one of the problems with art science where, an artist takes an idea like quantum and just goes with it and does whatever, and then you have a quantum physicist come in and freak out and say, there's nothing to do with quantum. You're actually doing something that's total baloney. You're creating actually more of a separation between art and science, and you're really creating a situation where what is this really about, and misinterpretation, etc. So it's really important to have that communication, but get into that, I said it before, that in-between sweet space where it's neither. You don't even know what it is. You don't even know what's the art world going to think, what's the scientist going to think. Nobody even cares because you just feel like, I'm getting to something. And that's the sense of wonder and curiosity that we all share, and that connects science and art in a true way. Then you know. So it's not like you're preaching and it's an ego thing and it gets out of control and you become Hitler, etc. We're watching that. We're watching that now, real time, on TV with our president daily, and it's really horrendous, right? So we need some, artists who are going to deal with some of that truth, of the truth of what this actually is happening, right? Not necessarily art and science, but maybe about climate change, maybe about politics, maybe about something where this whole group of people supporting this is actually being, experiencing something of their own medicine, right? So, yeah, I understand what you're saying completely. I do. It's dangerous. It is.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't come up with a better in the rush of the moment, but I got a bit ahead of myself.
It's good. No, but I just wanted to make the point that I think also a lot of science is incredibly moving. So I don't want to say that only art is moving. Science is moving, and many scientists that I met have the same motivations as artists. We ask the same big questions. And from my experience, a lot of the scientists have become a little bit removed from those motivations, the same motivations that started them to get into into science. Some of them work very solitary. They do a lot of coding, which I didn't know before, but 90% of their work is often coding. I think we, and also I think another thing that the scientists don't understand about artists is that we're not just artists. I don't know one single artist that is just an artist. If you can find one, please, I want to bow down to them, because we're many, many things, and we have our creative practice is fed by all of those other things. We're one of the most widely researched, probably, group of practitioners in the world, because we get completely obsessed with all kinds of different subjects, and we research them until we know a hell of a lot of information that we really shouldn't know. But like, I know how many buckets a day a cow produces, because I did a lot of research into TB at one point. But I think my point is that we can bring a critical eye and a critical evaluation to any field, and that can be utilized more. I think there's a whole range of attributes that artists have that can be beneficial to scientists. And I think the scientists really want that, and they're open to it. They see the value. I think sometimes, from what I see in the space industry, it's very difficult. They don't know how to turn that around. They don't know how to allow scientists. It's very scary for them. Everything is quantified, and but there are ways, I think, to quantify the value, and I think there are ways to justify spending, but it needs to be done in a shared language. We have to kind of meet each other in the middle to build trust and to create projects that will allow them to open up more and trust the kind of unknown space that artists are able to explore and extract from a little bit more, I think. So I went on a little bit of a...
There is one thing that I think connects scientists and artists a lot, and that's passion. We're all passionate about what we do. You ask a scientist, tell me about your work, you see the sparkle in the eyes, and I guess it's the same with an artist. Tell me about your work, you see the sparkle in the eyes. That's what drives us. As scientists, we are lucky. We are like kids forever. Because we keep discovering things. We really go at the frontier. We want to discover things that nobody knew before, and that's passion that drives it.
Yeah, I see that there are many things that we could still explore. Criticality is one thing. We didn't speak about that very much. We really spoke about the collaboration, the possibility. But of course, artists can also see themselves as critiques sometimes, and maybe also criticize certain things that are done in science. That's an aspect we didn't talk about at all. Maybe there's something you want to raise, you want to talk about before we close the second panel, and maybe some of us go up to see the exhibition together and can talk a little more there.
Are you asking the audience?
Yeah, the audience. I mean, unless you guys have questions to the audience.
I'm not sure
they didn't notice I asked them. Yeah. You were asked.
Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Hello, I find it very interesting when you talked about that we can experience the connection between science and art in an embodied way, and then you draw a parallel to visual arts, and I'm just wondering, visual art probably arrives larger audience via TV, via internet, and social media, but feeling and what you showed us, experiencing, touching, breathing, it's rather to a small audience. How we can do that such experience of art and science connection can be available to larger masses? I ask everybody.
Yeah, but I'll just say, first of all, data does not have to be translated into visual at all. In fact, the whole metamorphosis of chrysalis to butterfly was just, data. And, in the lab, they were super excited to see this, but they knew if they sent it to me, it would be meaningless. So they thought, oh, she's a media artist, why don't we translate it into sound? Which is another way of showing that data. But we're mostly visual animals. We like to see stuff, and hear things and feel stuff. And it's more and more like that. So the media is actually doing that. I think the younger audience is actually very much open to, you know, having a more multi-sensory experience. This idea of flat artwork and us watching from the outside is done. You know, it's really about, I want to feel it. I want to, you know, I want to know that I'm alive, right? So how you do it, there's 5 million ways how you can do it. This is the thing about complexity that's emerging now. I think it's also a problem with science because it's so reductionist generally. I'm not saying all of it, but methodology is generally reductionist, right? And artists are generally comprehensivist. So we come in and ask crazy questions like, wait, how does plankton respond to noise pollution? And, you can't tag a plankton and follow them, right? So you have to kind of, and then what do? You just experience the ideas. So there's no answer, there's no one formula. Diversity is where it's all going, and it's so fantastic, and everybody's trying to find one answer, and it's just not going to happen. There's many, many different ways, and we should all try different things to try to wake up that we're actually in danger, that our beautiful planet, our tiny little people on this planet are endangered, basically. And so whatever it means, whether it means showing how great space is or showing how, you know, dangerous the climate change is, by experience is the only way, because we're just bombarded too much with information. Too much. We can't process anymore. So anyway, there's no answer. You only have the answer for how you project yourself, you know, and what you feel you can do. And then, you know, if you reach 10 people, great. If you reach 100, even better, and so on. Right?
Yeah, I can maybe give a little example of something which I think worked very well in terms of an artwork. When I was, one of my sort of inspirations was, when I was researching my land art, I came across an image of Isamu Noguchi's Man to be Seen from Mars, which was a proposal for a huge face that would be built in the desert, and it would be seen from Mars. And the idea was that it was kind of these aliens looking at our extinct human race, and this is our legacy that we've left behind because we self-destructed. And it was in the wake of the Second World War and kind of disillusionment around that from the artist. But my real fascination with this, and I think the real power came from this, not the idea that an alien was looking at us from afar, but the fact that we can put ourselves in the place of that alien and look back at ourselves, and that gives us the opportunity to ask, who are we? What are we doing? Now, this is also a kind of phenomenon that is well documented in astronauts when they go to space as the overview effect, it's called. So it's very well documented. A lot of people know about this. The astronauts get an overwhelming feeling of how delicate our planet is and how they get a renewed sense of urgency as to how they want to help the planet and improve the planet. And I think the fact that an artwork can give us that without us having to go to space is incredibly powerful. And that didn't even exist, that artwork. That was just an idea. So I don't know, maybe that's an example.
I'm afraid I told you that I had a hard time keeping time, and I wanted to learn today. Apparently it didn't work, but I tried. It's linked to the fact that I found all these questions that were debated very interesting. I hope that those who stayed did so because they also found them very interesting, and were happy to discover all these ideas about art and science and go home with inspiration. Or do we still have time to go see the exhibition together? They close at 9, so
15 minutes. Let's go.
So is there maybe there, Ulrike, would you be in Vienna at some other point where we could say, okay, if people want to come? No, I don't live here. You don't live, exactly.
I think, I mean, we have 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
15 minutes. You do it. The curator says we can do it.
The artists that are here. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. We can focus on the works by the artists that are here. Thank you again, everybody.